Hi there, and welcome to our second video on teaching reading to students with Down syndrome. This video focuses on auditory memory, phonics, and phonological awareness. When teaching reading to students who have Down syndrome, it's important to understand that many people with Down syndrome are better at storing and processing information when visual support is provided. This may be due to specific deficits in auditory memory and processing, but it is also due to the fluctuating hearing loss commonly experienced by children with Down syndrome. This hearing loss often occurs during the early developmental years when children are being introduced to language and letter sounds. When hearing is not optimal at key periods in development, a child may not acquire awareness of these sounds, and therefore may not store the sound in their memory. The phonological approach to reading instruction focuses on teaching each phoneme or letter sound and using these sounds to decode or sound out words. With deficits in auditory processing, short-term memory, and weak letter sound correspondence, this approach may be very challenging for many learners with Down syndrome. Individuals who are able to articulate clearly may be more able to have success with a phonics-based approach. However, a whole word, sight word approach may provide a more successful starting point for some and may be a lifelong strategy for others.
Although many individuals with Down syndrome have articulation difficulties and may not be able to produce certain sounds, they can often still identify them. Articulation difficulties may be due to anatomical reasons, physiological reasons, neurological reasons, or hearing loss. These articulation difficulties must be taken into consideration if there's an expectation that the reader produce sounds. It's important to remember that the goal of a reading program is learning to read. Difficulties with articulation must be accommodated and not made a focal point of word recognition or oral reading activities.
When I asked him what was the matter,
Sight words. In our last video, we discussed the method of teaching sight words to students with Down syndrome, starting with high-meaning sight words, as well as joining words and sentence builders, such as I and is, my, to, are, and go, so that the student is immediately able to use their words to construct meaningful phrases and sentences. The match, select, and name approach to the acquisition of sight words was developed by Patricia Olwine and relies on the strengths of visual and recognition memory. Starting with high-meaning sight words motivates students because they recognize the value in learning these words. In this video, we're going to talk about simple activities that you can do that aim to support auditory memory, build phonological awareness, and may lead to the acquisition of phonics skills.
Here we go.
Tap.
Right, bathtub. Let's try again. Bathtub. Good job. Good, Sarah.
Phonics skills provide tools for students to sound out unfamiliar words. Let's make sure we understand a few terms first. The term working memory refers to the capacity to store and manipulate information in our short-term memory for brief periods of time. It provides a mental workspace that is used in many important activities in learning. Children with Down syndrome are better at storing and processing visual information than auditory information that they hear. This specific difficulty with auditory short-term memory and processing will affect vocabulary development, mental computation and problem solving, language comprehension, and listening skills, which are all related to reading.
It's helpful to think about the difference between hearing and listening. Students with Down syndrome may have trouble with components of both of these. Hearing refers to how well the ear itself is working, its sensitivity and ability to accurately detect sounds. Students with Down syndrome commonly have middle ear fluid buildup, which decreases the ear's ability to hear sounds accurately. This often happens on a fluctuating basis, meaning some days they may hear okay, but not on others. On top of this, these students may have trouble even if the sound gets past the ear and heads towards the brain. The complex and active process of listening involves steps that go beyond hearing. First, auditory processing, which is the sound getting from the ear to the brain and the brain recognizing the sound. Another piece is attention. For example, discerning which sound in the environment you should pay attention to. Finally, working memory, which is the brain's ability to hold on to the sound for a few seconds so that meaning can be associated with it. Essentially, hearing means that your ears detect a meow, and listening means that your brain manages and works with this sound. Your brain realizes, 1, I've heard this before, 2, it's an animal, and 3, it's the cat under my chair at this very instant. An example which demonstrates the kind of trouble that may ensue when auditory processing, attention, and memory are not at optimum levels is when a parent says to her child, "Put your dishes away and make your bed, or you're not watching any TV today." The child may become very upset because all he was able to keep in his working memory was the last piece, not watching any TV today.
Here are a few exercises that can be done in a group or one-to-one in several environments that aim to support auditory working memory. The grocery shopping game. The first player begins by saying, "I went shopping and I bought grapes." The next player must then repeat what the first player bought and then add an item to the list. The next player then repeats the first 2 grocery items and then adds a third. For younger students and for first-time players, a list longer than 2 or 3 items might be challenging. In this case, simply stop after 2 items and switch which player gets to start. A sign or a visual cue can be used when first learning how to play this game. This game can also be adapted to your student's interest by using the name of a store that your student really likes. You can also change it to a list of TV shows, toys, animals, clothes, or a list of items that you put on your pizza.
On my pizza, I put ham.
All right. Chris,
Amen.
say what Andrew put and then you.
I put
Nothing.
ham. I put cheese.
All right. On my pizza, I put ham, cheese, and mushrooms.
No, I'm lost.
On my pizza, I put mushrooms, ham, cheese, mushroom, and I put sour cream.
Sour cream.
Sound
Word span. This exercise focuses on keeping items in a sequence in your short-term memory. Start with 2 words and slowly, 1 word per second, say a sequence. Have the child attempt to repeat the sequence. Sock house.
Sock house.
If the child was unable to do so, give him a second sequence of words utilizing different words. Continue with 2 words until the student is repeating correct sequences back 80% of the time. At this point, move on to 3 words. Make sure you use words that your student knows. These can be taken from their sight words. It is also a good idea to use 1-syllable words that are easier to pronounce.
House, cup, sock.
Nice, good job. Cue younger students before doing this exercise that they need to use their ears. Make it fun by wearing big ears and warming up your ears. For younger students, this exercise might need to be introduced with visual supports. Begin by placing 2 picture cards face up on a table. Name each picture for the child from left to right. Then flip the pictures face down and ask the student to name the pictures again in the same order they saw them. A student can sign the words if they are nonverbal. For younger children, memory can be developed through play. Start with simple 1-step directions using toys the child is interested in. For example, with a doll, you could give your student the task of putting the doll to bed, or putting on a hat, or giving the doll some milk. After you see that your student is following 1-step instructions, move up to 2 steps. For example, put the dolly to bed and give her some milk. At home, this same type of activity can be done using the fridge or a cupboard. Tell your child to go to the fridge and find a specific item. Increase the number of items as your child gets better at keeping the items in his or her memory. Music is also a great way to work on memory. Sing songs with your child that have lots of repetition and stop partway through a line to see if your child can finish it.
Little, how I wonder.
It is also really important to change the settings of where you do these activities because this helps the student to generalize the task of following directions. Phonological awareness and phonics. Some common terms that are heard when talking about reading development are phonological awareness and phonics.
Phonological awareness is the ability to hear the sounds within words and to segment words into sounds, syllables, and also to understand rhyme and blending. A person who is phonologically aware can segment words into syllables and individual sounds, can hear how many words there are in a sentence and how many syllables there are in a word.
Dinosaur.
Nice, and you said that perfectly. Now clap it out. How many is that?
Dinosaur.
Perfect.
Phonological awareness is an auditory skill. Phonics is a skill that involves print. It involves understanding the relationship between sounds and letters. A student with phonics skills can use these skills to understand the relationship between sounds and letters and use this understanding to decode unfamiliar words.
What was the matter of? He said, I got up and walked inside the bed.
Nice, good. Okay. In order to do this, he or she needs to be able to hear the individual sounds in words, and this is why it's important to build phonological skills. The student also needs to be able to keep those letter sounds in their memory, which is why we have focused on activities aimed at auditory working memory. The activities we're going to introduce today focus on the following skills: word detection, syllable detection, phoneme discrimination, phoneme isolation, phoneme blending, and word families. Keep in mind that these skills take years to develop and should not be the sole focus of a student's literacy program. The focus must always be on the reading process and the enjoyment of success in being able to read. The following activities don't focus on rhyming skills because we have found that most of our students with Down syndrome have difficulty perceiving rhyming sounds. We typically approach rhyming using visuals and in the context of word families. Often these activities will need to be introduced with visual support, and then this support is gradually phased out. And some students may always need visual supports. Because phonics is a challenging skill to learn, it is important not to start your teaching session with it. Begin with a fun listening game or a sight word activity. Phonological awareness activities. Word detection. After working with your student on sight words and building sentences, they'll begin to understand that sentences are made up of words. It's important for your student not only to see the individual words in a sentence, but also to be able to hear the separate words in a sentence. This is one of the earliest skills in phonological awareness. Practice saying simple sentences to your student and have them finger count or finger paste the words as they repeat the sentence back. Syllable Say. Use pictures that students can name and then practice clapping out syllable parts. They can be sorted into 3 sets, so words that have 1 syllable, words that have 2 syllables, and words that have 3 syllables.
Show me with your hands.
Water.
Good. All right, all finished. All finished.
Try clapping out the names of people students know, sight words that you've been studying, months, days, and favorite foods. Which one doesn't belong? This activity focuses on phoneme discrimination. Present your student with 3 words visually. Be sure to use words that your student can say and that have letter sounds you are targeting. Direct your student's attention to the beginning letters as you read each one, emphasizing the beginning sound.
That's with
Nice. K, cat, or d, dog. and ask them to give you the one that is different. Once they have had practice and success doing this activity with the visual supports, remove the word cards and do the same activity with you saying the word. This now becomes an auditory exercise. Beginning sounds in words. This focuses on phoneme isolation. Use pictures of common things that you are sure your student knows the names of. Begin with 2 pictures and name each picture together. Then ask your student to give you the picture with the beginning sound that you provide.
And good job. Let's do duck and fish. Can you give me the one that starts with?
Fish and duck.
Which one starts with? Great.
Use high-meaning sight words to introduce initial phonemes. For example, give me a word that starts with a, or give me a word that starts with t. Use a visual by showing the letter if the student is not familiar with letter-sound correspondence, and then take the visual away as she demonstrates confidence. Good. Give me the letter that says eh. Excellent. These activities can be made more challenging by having the student focus on the ending sounds or on the middle sounds. I spy something that starts with. This is a great game that can be done almost anywhere, in the car, in the class, at the park, or even in your living room. Choose an object in view and say, I spy with my little eye something that starts with t. Clues can be given to help students locate the object. Once it is identified, reinforce that letter sound by saying, that's right, t, t, table begins with t. I spy with my little eye something that starts with b.
B. Branch.
Good guess, but no. This can be made more challenging by focusing on consonant blends and digraphs, such as the CH, SH, and TH sounds. Code breaker. This activity focuses on auditory blending. This activity requires students to hold 3 sounds in their memory and then blend them to make a word. It is a very advanced skill and takes time to develop. To start, choose a 3-letter word that the student knows. Explain that they will need to use their ears to hear the 3 sounds that you're going to say, and then they will have to guess what the word is. Sometimes it's really helpful to use a visual space holder that shows the student how many sounds they will hear. For example, just simply draw 3 squares and point to each square as you say each sound. This way, they know they have heard all the sounds, and it shows them the visual sequence of the sounds. You could also raise 1 finger for each sound that you say. Phonics. Let's talk about some approaches to teaching phonics. Learning to use phonics is a complicated and an ongoing task, and for most students, it's more challenging than learning sight words. Students must be able to learn letters and letter combination sounds and the rules related to them, then transfer this knowledge to decode new words.
It's important to note that many individuals with Down syndrome can have difficulty producing certain phonemes. In particular, R, such as R, TH, such as F, or V, the CH, such as Ch, the J, such as J, and the L, such as L. You may not want to spend a lot of time focusing on these phonemes, depending on the student. Using visual support, such as the American Sign Language alphabet, can help with the teaching of many of these concepts.
Some students will more readily grasp the sound symbol system than others. For older students, an individual evaluation of skills in phonological awareness would dictate where to focus your teaching. If an adult student is not showing gains in phonetics, it might be more valuable to focus on building sight word vocabulary, sentence construction, and reading texts for pleasure and information, using their strengths in visual learning. Consonant sounds. When teaching phonics, it is also important to begin teaching it within the context of the student's high-meaning sight words, in particular, family names. This way they can associate the letters and letter sounds with words they know and can visualize. The first letter of a student's name and of their family members' names is often a good place to start. From there, the letters B, M, P, A, and T can be introduced, or you can continue to choose beginning letters from your students' sight words. It's helpful to introduce them in sets that include one vowel, because then they can immediately make words and word families. Immediately make an alphabet book with your set of 5 letters. The top of each page should feature capital and lowercase letters. Below the featured letter, print sight words that begin with that same letter. Pictures of words help to make the book a bit more exciting. Use index card and cardboard to make flashcards of the lower and uppercase letters. Introduce your book to the student and read the title, and if they know their letters, have them read the title. Point to the letters and then the words, then use the match select name method to teach the letters. Match. Show the flashcard with the uppercase letter and have the student match it to the uppercase letter in their name. Do the same with the lowercase letter. Emphasize the letter sound as you point to the letter. Next, match the letters to the letters on the top of the page. Select. Place 2 letters on the table and say, "Show me the big D," or "Show me the little d." Then name the letters. If the student is unable, teach the student to sign for each letter. Once a letter has been introduced in this format, point it out whenever it appears in a book that you're reading. Emphasize the sound and use your students' sight words to direct you on which letters to introduce next. Vowels. When you introduce a vowel, explain that these letters are tricky and that they can make 2 sounds. For younger students, explain that the vowel doesn't always say its own name, but when it does, you can reward it by patting it on the head and drawing a line across the top. Emphasize the sound and explain that most of the time it just says ah, or the short sound of the vowel. We also use cued signs to show the different vowel sounds. Create lots of opportunities for your student to examine words with vowels and identify the kind of sound that they are making. For older students, you can introduce the sounds as long and short. For the long sounds, you can still have them draw the line across the top to emphasize the length of the sound.
Kite.
Good. Good saying its name. Kite. And what about the long O?
Whoa.
Perfect. Nice. Word families. Word families are groups of words with the same endings or letter patterns. If students can learn common letter patterns and the sound they make, they can easily recognize other words within one family. For example, if a student can read the word dot, they can apply their beginning consonant knowledge and read got, pot, and lot. Using color can help highlight these common endings. Introducing word families encourages students to look at the inside of words and to attend to the sounds that combinations of letters make. Word families can be initially introduced through the match select name method to familiarize students. Word sorts are a great technique that allows students to study words based on their similarities and differences of spelling patterns and sound patterns. Word sorts can emphasize auditory and visual components of words. Simply provide the student with a shuffled stack of words that are to be sorted according to the sound or the spelling pattern. A student can sort words visually by giving him a stack of flashcards, and he decides which labeled bin it should go in. Or a student can sort words by their sound patterns by having the instructor say the word and the student has to listen and choose the appropriate bin.
Mat.
Choosing sounds. The student chooses the correct letter sound to fill in the blank to make the word. For example, you might have the ending IG, and the student needs to figure out what word needs to go at the beginning to say the word pig. Start by allowing the student to select the letter from a choice of 2. As they become more confident, they may not need a choice and can provide the missing letter on their own. This can be adapted to target the middle sound and the ending sounds as well. Initial phoneme characters. Be creative and draw a character of any kind on the board. Ask students to come up with a name that begins with a targeted sound that you want to focus on. For example, if you were focusing on the letter sound of B, then you might name your character Bob Bailey. Explain to your student that Bob can only say words that start with B. Give a few examples and then let your students take over. Write the words surrounding the character. And that starts with N.
Nickelback.
Nickelback. That's a good one.
Nickel.
Nicholas.
Nicholas.
Chris, can you think of a number that starts with N?
9.
Letter hop. Use chalk outside and write target letters on the pavement. Say a letter sound out loud and have the student jump on the corresponding letter. This can be done at home inside using paper letters to jump on, or magnetic letters on the fridge for students to select. Code breaker. Use word families that your student has learned. For example, I might say, crack this code. At, k, at. Depending on your student's skills, you can have them write down the letter sound that they hear or use letter cubes or a keyboard and type it. M, at. There are many online phonics games that are fun and educational for your students. We have included a few of our favorite websites at the end of this video. When evaluating your students' progress, remember to do receptive evaluation and not only expressive. A student might be able to select a letter sound more accurately than producing the sound. Therefore, let him show you his knowledge this way. This accommodates errorless learning, as there will be ample time to practice letter sounds when you're working with the words and letters. In conclusion, all of our children and young adults are going to acquire reading skills at different levels and at different stages. As educators, it's our role to teach to the strengths of our students. Many parents and instructors who are watching this video probably already have several activities that target phonological awareness and phonics. Hopefully, we've been able to add a bit more to your toolbox. In using all the resources available to us, it's important to keep in mind that often we must adapt programs and activities to accommodate the individual learning needs of our students who have Down syndrome, keeping the following pointers in mind. Introduce new concepts visually. Provide more opportunities for practice and varied repetition. Give your student more time for processing after you have requested a response. Reduce instructional language. And most important, make sure your sessions are enjoyable for you and your student. Your goal is to foster a love of language and reading. Thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for our third video on teaching reading to students with Down syndrome.